How's everyone this morning? Morning on the YouTube side. How's everyone this morning? Excuse me. Just a minute. Those of you that have the writings of Elder Samuel Trott that we republished many years ago, well, 99. Not quite as far back as I thought. This is in there, morning. It's one of Trott's objection to Benedict's History of the Baptist. And as it is short, we're going to try to go through it right quick. His first paragraph gives some background here. Brother Beebe, I received in March, April 1843 two numbers of Elder D. Benedict's Historical Correspondent. Now, he put out that magazine, Good Afternoon and Good Morning. Benedict put out that magazine to try and garner support for his second edition of the History of the Baptist. That's the big 2-volume one, if I remember right. On receiving the first, I concluded on writing to him and showing the necessity of more impartiality as a historian than he appeared disposed to show toward the old school Baptist. Now, Benedict was definitely and decidedly a missionary Baptist, and he wasn't going to show anything to the old school. But contempt for their anti-missionism, their anti-education, for their anti-tract and anti-this and anti-that. It does show if you read his history, as with most missionary Baptist histories. Showing the necessity of more impartiality as a historian than he appeared disposed to show toward the old school Baptist, if he would do justice. Afterwards, however, I determined on giving my objections, either through the Signs or Advocate, to our brethren's furnishing him with the materials of our history, on the ground of the stand he has already assumed against us. But starting about that time, on a 4-week tour from home, by the time I returned, I found that he was being sufficiently noticed by others, and I therefore let it pass. Had Elder Benedict, in his proposition to publish a history of all who practiced immersion, asked each order of Baptists to furnish a sketch of their distinct views of doctrine and order, and such statistics of their churches, etc., as they thought proper, that he, simply as a historian, might record the same, I think likely that I thoughtlessly, notice his words here, that I thoughtlessly should have advocated his being furnished by some of our brethren with proper information. But the great head, who knows how to preserve his flock as a separate people, kindly ordered that the temptation should not be presented to the old school Baptist, thus to sanction by their own act their being placed side by side with missionists, Campbellites, etc., as only a distinct branch of the general mass of those called Baptists. How many times have you heard that sentiment still propounded? Even more than that, oh, we're part of the Baptist branch of the church. Let me tell you something. He's the vine, we're the branches. Those branches aren't churches, those branches are people. The church has no branches. He said, I come. He said, on this rock, I will build my church. Got that? On this rock, I will build my church. Not churches, not a tree. He's not planting it, he's building it. And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Branches of the church, branches of the Baptist. But let's go on here. Elder Benedict, on his very onset, has shown that his work is to be the sectarian work of a mission Baptist, that he is not disposed to extend to the old school Baptist that candor which might be expected even from a modern sectarian. After the garb of a historian is thus thrown off and the adversary stands forth to open view, surely old school Baptists would be casting pearls before swine, furnish matter for him to distort. As there seems, however, from the tenor of several communications, both in the Advocate and Signs, to be a hankering in some of our brethren to be like others around in seeking notoriety through the pages of human history, I wish to present some objections to the old school Baptists writing a history of themselves, and to let those objections stand for what they will fetch. First time I read this, I thought, my. How could anyone object to a history? Listen to his objections and weigh them carefully. There's three. The first is the second, then the third's real short. First, God, whose providence governs all, and orders every event with a special reference to his purpose concerning his church, has seen fit in no past age to raise up any special historian of the gospel church, nor to order that any statistical accounts of her waxings and wanings should be transmitted down. Brother Trott, think for just a minute about association minutes. When innovations upon the Baptist simplicity began to creep in preparatory to the raising up of the image of the beast, such as the formation of associations, putting forth articles of faith, establishing schools and colleges for educating persons in reference to the ministry, etc. As a consequence of these, Baptist histories came to be written. Not only has God not ordered that the distinctive history of his church should be chronicled from period to period, but he has directed that his church, in its peculiar order, should be mostly overlooked by the professed writers of church history, and that it should be so obscured in the wilderness where it was hid that any attempts to give a correct history of the travels of the gospel church from the apostles on to this time would be almost a nullity. God has, however, so ordered it that from time to time incidental notice have been taken by the historians of the times of his people, not in a way to be sure to flatter the pride of those claiming to be descendants in a church relation, but sufficient to show that the same kind of separated people have existed in every past age that were in the days of the apostle people everywhere spoken against. And my word for it, Elder Benedict, without our taking any trouble for it, will, in noticing the old school Baptist as exceptions to those whom he will chronicle as the church, present to view a people having the same external works which Christ's people have always borne on the pages of history. If we wish to be numbered with Christ's little and afflicted flock, why should we wish to appear before the world in a different garb from that by which historians have always distinguished them? Second objection to any attempt at this day to write a special history of the old school Baptist is, consider this one carefully. This one kind of got me. My second objection to any attempt at this day to write a special history of the old school Baptist is, that Christ's church is the same church, and his people, in their distinctive characteristics, are the same now as in the apostles' days, and therefore their history, even on to the end of time, has long since been written, and by inspiration of God. Do any inquire for the doctrine the old school Baptists profess? Let them look, excuse me, let them look into the New Testament and find the apostles' doctrine. They have it. Do they inquire for our order? The order professed by old school Baptists and mostly maintained by them is that only which was established by the apostles and found in the New Testament. Do any wish to know the changes of external circumstances through which the church has passed and shall pass? These are all faithfully given in prophecy. And God has made the fulfillment of such prophecies as have occurred to be clearly, though often unwittingly, recorded by the worldly historians. Morning. Do we wish a history of the display which God makes of his grace in adding to the church? God is, from time to time, showing his church and people that the New Testament account concerning his grace is as true of it now as when written. He displays the same sovereignty in it now, then. Shows it is now as almighty to break the hearts and subdue the prejudices of sinners as then, and shows in it the same richness and goodness to bind up the brokenhearted and heal our wanderings. Of this display of God's grace we may speak and write, as they did in the days of the apostles, for cheering the hearts and calling forth the gratitude of the saints. But think not that this or that showing forth of God's grace must be recorded on the history page as a memento of what grace is or of what it can do in conquering sinners. God has given already such memento of it in the New Testament. And he is, from time to time, recording the triumphs of his grace to the joy of his saints, not with ink, but by the Spirit of the living God, not on paper, but in the fleshly tables of sinners' hearts. And his people carry within them a reward of its infinite greatness and goodness, and are ready, when called, to bear either a living or dying testimony to it. God will never be without witnesses of his grace. Do you wish a record from time to time of the number of churches, disciples, etc.? Why should you? Our numbering of them has ever been found deceptive. He whose business it is to know their number has his people all accountably numbered. He calls them all by name, knows them all together, will take care that not one of them shall be lost, and when he comes to gather them all before his Father's throne, he will present such a multitude as no man can number. Do any of us think that by having a history written, our names may be transmitted on its pages to posterity? How trifling, my brethren, is such a wish when rightly viewed, in comparison with having our names written in the book of life, where, if we are truly Christ's disciples, they were written before time began, and where they will remain prominent when death and hell shall have delivered up their dead which are in them. If we are not his disciples, we may yet contrive to have our names written on the pages of anti Christian history. Should it be objected that the old school Baptists cannot be the same church that was in the apostles' days, that dissensions and divisions and heresies, etc., are from time to time manifested among us, read again, and you will find the same was the case whilst the apostles lived, and that such things should be among the church. Why then should we want our history written by a fallible man? The third objection I have to a history of the old school Baptist being written is that it looks like distrusting the faithfulness of God to accomplish what he has foretold and promised. concerning his church, etc. But as my paper is full, I will not dwell on this, so I close. Yours, etc. S. Trott. As one who loves history, first time I read that, I was kind of put off by it. Second time I read it, I was kind of condemned by it. Well, that's truth. I was. Do we want to be like the nations? After the flesh, I think we can all say that's true. After the spirit, no, we don't really want that, do we? Excuse me. Trott was a great writer and a spiritual man, therefore, kind of a spiritual writer. And I like him. Don't agree with everything he had to say, particularly on eschatology. But I do like him. Yes, great thinker, and can't say anything about that. $158 in Gadsby. $158 in Gadsby. Sweet the moments, rich in blessing, which before the cross I spend, life and health and peace possessing, from the sinner's dying friend. May I sit forever viewing mercy's streams and streams of blood. Precious drops my soul bedewing, plead and claim my peace with God. I don't know about y'all, but I can fellowship with that sentiment. Amen. Brother over here on the YouTube side said, I'm sure that there are things that we all say and believe that cause disagreements as well. But men like him were very gracious as well when they were railed upon, the lesson for us all. If you want to, in my opinion, what Trott was all about, go and listen to the videos I made a few years ago on Trott and Parker. Trott's response to Parker and Parker's response to Trott. And you'll see how religious disagreement, in my opinion, should be carried out. Brother Parker, Brother Trott, Elder Parker, Elder Trott. Brother Parker said that Brother Trott was so much more a better theologian and preacher than he was that he hated to even try to answer him. Trott took that very humbly. He could be hard as nails when he had to be, particularly against the enemies of truth. But if he considered you a brother, there was a graciousness there that needs to be there with us. 158 before we get off here. Sweet the moments rich in blessing, which before the cross I spend. Life and health and peace possessing from the sinner's dying friend. Well, forgive me, brethren, I've lost the tune. It's gone. We're going to start that over. And I think it's in the good old songs. I hope so, because I don't have I have to go get an old school other ones. Otherwise, 80. Let's see if it's the same tune that I know. That I know, and I just messed up. Oh, brother, you need to go back and read Thompson and Osborne again. Osborne was nasty to Brother Thompson. He was very nasty. Declared them all to be heretics. I mean, there was no compassion in him at all. Do me so. Yep. Sweet the moments rich in blessing, which before the cross I spend. Life and health and peace possessing from the sinner's dying friend. May I sit forever viewing mercy streams in streams of blood, precious drops my soul be doing, plead and claim my peace with God. Truly blessed is the station, low before his cross to lie. While I see divine compassion floating in his languid eye. Here it is, I find my heaven, while upon the Lamb I gaze. Love I've much forgiven. I'm a miracle of grace. Love and grief, my heart dividing, with my tears his feet I'll bathe. Constant still in faith abiding, life deriving from his death. May I still enjoy the feeling in all need Jesus go. Prove his wounds each day more healing, and himself more deeply know. Sorry, I messed that second verse up. Well, no need to go back and mess with it. You're right. Osborne was he was. Excuse me. Yeah, Osborne was quite the jerk. All right. I'm gonna get off here. Hope you all have a blessed weekend. Be going to Wells Track, Lord willing, tomorrow. Come back Sunday. Hope this Lord be with y'all, particularly if you have a meeting to attend. He'd be in your presence and bless you. Give you grace, mercy, and strength to praise Him through it. And now, for now, adios.